games.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Bellezza. I'm a product manager at Riot Games on League of Legends.
Hey, Robyn, I'm a co-founder of Otherworld Interactive with the Aragon studio. I also do other indie dev on the side, and I have a background in engineering at first.
I'm Jesse Aragon. I'm a product developer, a hardware product developer at Hyperkin, and we made the Retron 5, Smart Boy, and Superboy.
All right, so this whole summit was put together with the idea of students being come together and develop their skills. And I was wondering if you guys had any advice for good sources of info, or where do you guys go when you're trying to build your skills in what little off time you have?
Google.
Seriously, Google. If you need some more, Stack Overflow is pretty good if you're looking at a specific product. But Google, really, Google.
I was going to recommend Jesse Shell. He has a lot of lectures on YouTube of his game. It's the Art of Game Design. His book, The Art of Game Design, is pretty awesome. Another way of thinking about design.
Oh, another good YouTube. I'm sorry. I was going to say you were going YouTube. Wait, Brackies has a good YouTube channel. He focuses mainly on Unity and stuff like that, but I thought his stuff was pretty good. But I love to eat sheep. Brackies.
I really like Pinterest. I can get lost on that for hours for just animation reference, also just cool stuff, inspiring stuff. But also just a slightly different take on this, like each other is a really big one. Basically the first people I go to are the people sitting next to me, and then the people sitting next to them. So just people in this room are probably great resources for you. So do that too.
You laugh, but Pinterest actually has a lot of good UI concepts and actually game design options to do. Yeah.
Sort of a follow-up on that. Do you how do you identify the point where you're like, oh, I really need to start building up a particular skill, or you want to when you is it more about scratching that itch, or is it more about kind of need to build a new skill set, or where you guys
Kind of depends what you're supposed to be working on at any particular point in time. Depending on your team, you may not have somebody who's a specialist in pathfinding or something like that, but it may have to be done. So somebody just takes that bullet for the team and it goes and looks it up. But day to day, even simple stuff that I forgot exactly how to do a down product or something. You look it up, and it's one of the things that I think people sort of lose track of when they're thinking about interviews. They assume, oh, I have to impress everybody with how much I know. But while that's sort of true, it's also true that when you're actually on the job, it's dumb to expect you to know everything, just off the top of your head. So don't be afraid to look at good reference material.
I think if you want someone to take a design you want done seriously, you need to have the skills to illustrate that design in some fashion, whether it's paper prototyping, weird shitty collage in PowerPoint, something that can express the interactions you want, even if you're not necessarily programming.
Yeah, I think it's always good to be doing something. I know on the music side, there's generally this expectation that, oh, you're a musician, you're awesome at what you do. And sometimes that means as a musician, you're scared to do something that you're not good at, but you kind of have to go through that if you want to get better. Like I spent a few years, about 5 years ago, being a very bad saxophone player. But now I'm a pretty good saxophone player. And that has actually helped make all the projects that I'm on right now way better. And that's cool. There's always going to be something that you want to do and you have to be willing to do it.
I guess in your time in games, we have this idea that if you're a game designer, if you're sound design, programming, kind of these somewhat, well, not always well defined, but at least there's an attempt to define what kind of what these roles are going to look like. Are there underrated skills in game dev, like that you've seen when people come in and it's like are kind of weak with those skills? And I guess, do you have any advice on how some of those skills can be built?
Yeah. Got this one, guys. No, but I mean, for me, this is like the story of my life. I feel like I learned absolutely nothing about soft skills and teamwork and how to sort of organize teams and work effectively together in school. I was just entirely focused on my craft. And so I felt really, really unprepared for that, and also just didn't even know how to deal or cope with that kind of thing when I got to working in the real world, I guess. And so like a big thing that I see from a lot of people is just huge resistance to direct confrontation, huge resistance to giving people critical feedback, to receiving critical feedback, to seeking it out, and that's like, that's an incredibly frequent common thing. Like I like to imagine, especially now that there's lead in my title, that's so much less likely that anybody's going to criticize me, and so now I have to go dig for it. Like every single one of you, and I said this in my talk, but like every single one of you, all the people in your life are frustrated with you about something. And they'll never tell you what it is. And that information is so valuable. And so like being able to build relationships that are strong enough where you can get that information regularly is super important. And really, like, nobody gets trained in that. You just have to kind of start practicing that and being that, and it's super awkward all the time. Yeah.
I think it sounds kind of dumb, but a similar skill is whenever you're in college, everyone's like, oh, you need to be like an independent worker when you go to the workforce. They want people who don't need to be told what to do, but can go do it. And a lot of my employees are great at doing that, but I do really wish that they would check in more so I know what's going on with them, so we can kind of do touch points. So being able to communicate, not worrying about bugging your team leads because you're just checking in with them is actually a super appreciated skill if you're trying to do it all year.
This is a little more general, but and it's not specific. But if you're a programmer, if you know anything about art or know anything about design, and you're able to sort of bridge that gap, that can make an enormous difference. It's even better the other way around for programming if design actually understands what it is that you're doing and why things are not possible. Or like an artist who understands the technical reasons, like Anthony mentioned in his talk, you don't have a 6,000 poly crate. It's a so yeah, cross-discipline understanding of any level really helps the team.
I'm going to yes and that because it comes down to games and creative work are made by teams, and so understanding what it feels like to be a different craftsperson helps build empathy for when you work together. If you understand, you don't have to be like, for me, I'm a producer, right? I don't know how to code, but I know enough about the basics that I can ask questions, and when my engineers explain the pros and cons, I can empathize with the work that needs to be done, same with my artists and same with my designers. And so the more that you're able to, we call it T-shaped, right? You have your main skill that you index deep on, and the more that you can get a broad knowledge and understanding of what your peers do, the easier it is for you to communicate and work together. So whatever you can do to just really understand what every role on the project does will help you make a better project.
Who was in my talk? I remember what I said about producers, right? Good producers, broad skill set, they're the unsung heroes of the project. I don't even know, well, the other thing I just want to add about this, and I'm going to send this one out to programmers specifically. I think everybody always has a fear of looking dumb. And programmers really have that. You got to get over that, because if you don't know something and you make an assumption as your lead, if you do something wrong and you didn't ask, then I am going to think you're dumb. But if you come up to me and you're like, should I do this as a hash map or something else? I'll talk to them. And again, if you work at a place where they make you feel dumb for asking a question, then that's them, that's not you. But sorry, that was a little close to your.
No, cheers.
One thing that I think people might underestimate the importance of, but are probably doing it all the time, is playing other people's games. There's and I'm kind of guilty of this too. I play a whole lot of games, but I don't necessarily express to other people that I work with what it is about those games that are good or bad. Understanding other people's games and actually talking about it can make your games better, because you've seen what didn't work, and you don't have to go through the pain of the failure that somebody else went through. So, yeah, play a lot of games and be paying attention when you're playing the game. And explain why you like what you're seeing, why you don't like what you're seeing, and try to apply that to your own projects.
So you guys were talking about adding to kind of your own, I guess, internal lexicon, like interdisciplinary learning, and then not being afraid of looking stupid and asking questions. But I know we have a lot of kind of like club leaders up here today, and I was wondering if you could talk about like some of the communication strategies to make sure that people are kind of all going in the same direction. On a project-wide, we usually do like discipline or feature team, and then also like maybe some advice for detecting when things are going wrong before you start getting like assets that have been working on for several weeks that are just unusable.
It depends on your individual company, but one of the things that we do at Obsidian is we have groups that we call strike teams, which are they're sort of fluid depending on where you are in development. But for instance, on the current project I'm on, we have an area pipeline strike team. And we sort of set goals regarding, how are we going to build levels? What are the game objects that the designers are going to have in the levels to build gameplay? And we set up goals to do first passes on those, and then later adding new features to those. And so you've got programmers, designers, and artists, and a producer all in the same room working toward the same goal instead of just a group of programmers throwing stuff over the wall to a group of designers. And so it comes down to communication with the rest of the team.
I really think a good producer is key for that.
Yeah, you have to have a good producer to keep track of all of the tasks, who's going to do what, and who is waiting for work from somebody else before they can continue.
A good producer is worth their weight in gold. I mean, they'll help communication on the project. They'll keep you on track. And like one of the parts you asked about, but that's okay. But one of the parts he asked about is like, how do you know when things are starting to go off track? A lot of the times, a producer who's on top of it, and I forgot your name again, the guy from Riot, Paul, he could probably talk a lot about this. Producers are usually pretty quick at detecting when things are going off track. Good producers. Bad producers, boy, let me tell you. I won't tell you here, but no, but good producers. Yeah, and again, anyway, I'm going to let before I get in trouble.
No, it's all good. Everyone has their experience, and I get it. Like, there's a spidey sense, right? As a producer, in my experience, it's my team captain, right? Here's what we're owning, here's what we're doing, the whole team puts it together. But at the end of the day, someone needs to unblock things, someone needs to provide the team information to get the best out of them and teach them and help them. And as we were alluding to, like, there's a spidey sense you can feel just working with other human beings. Like, is communication off? Are people kind of giving each other dirty looks? Are like people talking shit? Like, let's work that stuff out and accomplish the goal together. And I think that doesn't have to be only the producer's job. I think the team itself can come together and agree on how they want to work together. So, saying in the talk that I gave, something that's very useful and perhaps for organizational use is a charter, a working agreement. Here's what we believe in. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we expect of each other. Having very clear expectations of what you can count on for each other and codifying it gives you something to point to so that you create the culture that you want versus just assuming, right? Oh, they didn't talk to me. Maybe he thinks I'm an idiot. Maybe they're in the zone, right? Like, if you explicitly break down how you want to work together, a lot of that stuff just goes away.
So we have a 7 to 15 person team. What we will typically do is have stand-up every morning. So every morning, everyone goes around and says, what did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? Am I blocked from doing this thing that I think I'm supposed to be doing today? small, we work in the same room, so you can shout and chatter at people as needed. And then also, currently, because we're a small team, I'm producing and also lead engineer, which kind of combines everything in one place, everything goes through me. But I think even if you have a producer and a lead engineer separate, a lot of stuff will go through the lead engineer. It's really important to get your pipeline down. So that means, hey artists, do you know how you're supposed to be naming stuff? Do we have a game that takes place in 4 rooms? Make sure you know what room it is. Is it a static object that you're interacting with? All that can go in the file name if you have a really nicely organized system. Organizing everything, especially working across discipline, super important to figure it out before the project starts. Otherwise, you're probably going to steal this.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I want to just underline, which everybody's kind of getting at, is don't underestimate just how easy it is to get off track from each other. I mean, I feel like I've worked on projects where the goals are constantly shifting without talking about it. I don't know why I'm working on the thing I'm working on, and that's just literally me working by myself. Like, put another person in the mix, and now all of my anxiety and goal changing is affecting another person, and they have all their own baggage, right? So like, I've been on teams of 3 where we completely spiral out and don't realize we're not working toward the same vision. And it's because it's hard to articulate that vision. It's hard to explain what we want. And so like, good goal setting is something that I work on a lot. It's still something I mess up a lot too. It's really difficult to set really clear, specific goals so that everybody can work toward the same thing. I think one thing you said when you asked the question is like, how do we know we're all working toward the same thing, so an asset weeks later isn't a bunch of waste of time? It's like, well, if somebody's even just working on something for weeks, that's bad. Like, check in every, like I said, every day or whatever it is. Like, are we working toward the same thing still? A big thing that I try to get artists to do, which a lot of artists struggle with, like, someone will ask you for something or you'll get a task, and it's in your nature as an artist to be like, I'm going to go deliver on that really well. So if you want me to make a cool character, I'm going to go make it. Instead of saying, why? Why do you need this character? And suddenly the answer could be, oh, well, we're testing out this new ability. And it's like, oh, well, you don't need a character for that, right? I'm not going to make that. That is not a great use of my time. And that might result in some tension or some like conflict there. You have to sort of explain your goals and why spending all this time on a character is an effective way for them to solve their goal. I'm sure it's the same thing for engineering all the time. It's like, I want this tool or feature, and it's like, that's not actually what you want. Let's talk about what your goal is.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. First of all, one of the things that we like to say at Obsidian is like, not officially, but if you see something, say something. You should never ever make the assumption that everybody else or even somebody in charge of a certain department is aware of something that is wrong with the game. If you're playing the game and you see something that is like problematic, or you see a roadblock that's going to come up because of it, say something to somebody, a producer, the person who's in charge of that.
Maybe even multiple times.
Exactly. And to speak to your point, as when we're doing programming work, a lot of times you'll get design will come to you requesting a very specific feature, or something that they've spent a whole lot of time planning out, and they tell you, this is what I want. But often you have to ask them, what are you actually trying to get out of this? What is the player's experience going to be? Because rather than taking that design as gospel and trying to write code to match it, you can often get exactly the same player experience by doing something far easier and less time consuming, easier to maintain in code. So, don't feel bad about questioning the reason that things are being asked for, and never assume that you're being given the mandate, especially by another department, to do things in a certain way. Again, yeah, your mileage may vary depending on the company you work in.
Yeah, and then maybe to flip that around too, like, don't make other people feel bad if they ask you those questions.
Absolutely, right. One thing I want to share, I have a weekly lunch with a friend of mine and I was talking about that. He's like, well, no, we don't even worry about that. The first thing we want to do is solve the problem. They don't look to Castellane and Blizzard. Now, again, this is anecdotal. Maybe they do later on, like, okay, but as a cultural, their culture at Blizzard is they're like, solve the problem. I'm not interested if you did it or if you did it. I want to solve the problem and move past that. That's the most important thing, because the reality is you are all on the same team, right? So I want to stress that is solve the problem first. Don't worry about like, well, they said he would do it, he did do it. Well, okay, let's just see what needs to be done. And the other thing I want to I want to mention is the asking why and the talking about that. That's part of good communication skills. And yes, sometimes it can lead to a confrontation, or sometimes it can lead to a challenge, but also sometimes, at the end of the day, the game has to get made. Tim Kaine tells a story about Fallout 1, where they were like, hey, we've got this game, it's called Fallout, and we should probably have some sort of radiation poisoning / Fallout system in it, because it didn't have that. And so a designer wrote pages and pages and pages of this complicated Fallout system. And then they handed it to the programmer, and they're like, we don't have time to do this. But I'll tell you what we do have. We have a poison system that's been in the game forever. And I can take 75% of your design, and I can give you your radiation sickness system. I think I said Fallout system really, but radiation sickness. And I can give that to you in like 3 days. That's a huge savings. Like if I can give you 75 or 80% of what you want in 3 days versus like 3 weeks, that's huge. So, and sometimes I think that, in this case, the designer wasn't bad. They were like, well, that's fantastic. That's great. Because now they know what's going to get done. So, communication, huge. I can't even stress that enough.
All right, so, there's, like a lot of people, we play great games, and we're like, oh, I have like ideas for games and stuff like that, and we come in and we realize that we can't make World of Warcraft on our own computer. But like, I think there's a lot of people out there who have potentially great ideas, and they come in, and like in a large studio, even a small studio, it can be hard to kind of make space for those ideas to have a chance. And I guess I was wondering how you guys go about presenting your ideas, and then also how do you gauge like whether like standing up for an idea is worth it, I guess, or like if you get to a point where like someone like you're coming up against someone else who really doesn't agree with that idea, like how do you resolve that?
That's actually something that I should probably add in my talk, where I'm talking about when you interview with companies. As game developers, that's a question you should ask them. What happens if I have an IP that I'm working on or something I'm working on? What happens to that? Some companies won't let you do it. They were like, we don't want you to do that. We don't want to risk a conflict. We would prefer you just focus on our stuff. Some companies are open with it. So that is actually something you should ask when you go to, you go to your interview, and then near the end of the interview, they're like, do you have any questions for us? That should be one of the questions you should ask. Yes, do am I free to work on this? What happens if I work on this? Just ask it. They'll tell you. They kind of have to. The other part of that question, which is like finding space and making space to work on that. Well, one, it depends on the company working at. You might work at a company that won't let you. The other part of it is if you want to bring that company internally. Some companies will do something like, especially if you're a company like Obsidian, which is again like a work for hire, even though we do own some IPs that we're working on, and sometimes they'll ask, submit your idea. And we'll make a decision. We'll see about pitching it, and then, sometimes, like I worked at another company called Timegate, and they actually had a contest every year. And first place got like $3,000, second place got $2,000, and there were 3 third place who each got $1,000. And that was just for a pitch, And other companies will probably have other ideas, and I'll concede, or whatever the right term is, cede the mic.
I think there's nothing more convincing than having a prototype, both for yourself to see if does this work, is this actually fun, and then so you can show other people, maybe get money. We do a lot of pitching, since a lot of what we do will be contract work versus our independent stuff, and for both we have to have a pitch deck of some sort, and preferably some kind of prototype, because although the pitch deck could be amazing, it could be the best thing, you have this beautiful concept art, you might not get the money unless you can be like, look, let me put this on your face in case of VR, play it, and look, it's fun. You can't argue with that. So if you come to me with look at our company too, that's a great way for us to start managing your game. We think that it's awesome.
At Hyperkin, where we actually have tangible, controllers, consoles, having a prototype, just like she said, definitely gauges the interest. So as if it's a demo or some type of new model. Definitely want to show somebody to, get your idea and get people interested in your idea.
On League, because we're a live game and been around a lot, the way we frame new features and new opportunities is what's a problem we want to solve, what's something that has player pain or has potential good player value, potential good business value, and then anyone on the team can work together with the product manager. Part of my job to have to solve problems, so put together and basically a pitch. Here's what we believe would solve that problem. Here's what we believe that solution may look like. Here are several solutions. Here's what we believe the upside of it. And here's a rough guess and estimation. And then we take it up and we decide, like, hey, should we fund that for this year of development? And we do that quarterly, so it's pretty active.
So we have a lot of people here who are kind of graduating soon, already graduated, recently graduated, desperately trying to I guess like there's a fear, I think, people especially like just entering like their first job or their first internship or something like that about not actually having the skills that they were hired for, things like that. I guess
and you're doing the social medias or the Twitches or the YouTubes while you're working, hopefully, legitimately working, but it can give you, or it can create a bad perception about your work ethic. Again, maybe your boss is open to it and they understand the environment and that will be okay. That's just something that maybe you should just be cautious of. Which is that, like, hey, that new programmer, they're on Facebook all the time. Hopefully they will then come and talk to me, and I'll be like, yeah, and he gets his work done and he's fine. Don't worry about it. But that's just, again, like, I would say it's not a bad habit, but it could be a perception of a bad habit. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, to like, I guess go a little meta with that is just the imposter. So I mean, like imposter syndrome and things like that are so incredibly common. It's almost part of being in this industry and in this field and doing anything creative. And I don't just mean art. I just mean anything in making a game is a very creative endeavor, and it's risky and it's scary. And I think the most important thing for me is trying really hard not to assume what other people think about me, and to get that information, to actually talk to them and ask them questions, and ask those questions frequently and in a safe enough way that they feel like they can answer them honestly. Like, I think the worst thing I did to myself was sit at my desk and go like, oh God, I think everybody thinks I suck. It's like, or I could go actually ask them and find out and find the ways that is true and find the ways in which that isn't true, because that fear isn't always wrong, but it's not useful to think that people think you suck. It's useful to know that they think you suck at this specific thing. Or maybe they'll say, I don't actually know if anything's wrong, but I see you on Facebook all the time, so it made me grumpy. Like, wow, I was assuming something completely different. So, like, I guess my point is just like, anytime I've assumed what people think about me, I've been wrong. And even if I've been right, it's like just happenstance, So, again, like, reach out to people, build those relationships, and try to cultivate that honesty with you, and you'll get great information and hopefully put a lot of that fear to rest, or put it to a forefront in a specific way that you can actually start bettering yourself and dealing with it.
You're not going to know things. Nobody knows everything, especially if you're coming in as a junior. No person who is going to hire you in their right mind is going to expect you to know everything right away. If you do, come work for us.
Good for them.
Yeah, that'd be great. But, and this happens to me even now. It's like, when I don't know something, I get anxiety about it. And sometimes, it can affect me negatively, but don't be afraid to figure out how things work. Go and research it. If you are worried about it, get rid of the worry by learning what you're worried you don't know. It's not very productive to just be worrying all the time about things that you don't know.
make it a goal to learn.
I actually go, I have 2 junior programmers that work for me right now, and I'll actually go and I'll ask them. I'm like, hey, Unity sucks, how do I do this? And they're like, and they'll show me, right? Unity doesn't suck, but this is just me being, well, it challenges me sometimes. So again, like, and I don't, and if you get, and one of them, his name's George, he's a really funny guy, and sometimes he'll cut attitude with me, and I'm like, I write your review, George. That usually straightens things up right there. But no, again, I can't stress that enough. The more you're comfortable with communicating and getting feedback and talking and giving feedback, just the better it'll be, If you just sit alone in a corner and you're quiet, and maybe you're getting good work done, but you're missing out on part of it. Because this is, again, it's a team thing, and and the more you're a part of that, the more you're involved in that, even if it's just a little bit. You could actually even be that guy or girl, right? Who's like, you never say anything, but then every now and then you say something, people are like, oh, that was really astute. And then you become the person who doesn't talk often, but when you do, they listen. That's me. I talk all the time. But I'm do you guys remember in my talk when I said I could come up here? I said if I talked to some of these other speakers, I was stressing how small the industry was. Do y'all remember that? So, I was talking to him, mutual friend John Eric Khalif. I was talking to Vincent, mutual friend Rich Taylor. I was talking to Paul, was it Paul? Yep. John Eric also, and Joseph Graylock. And so I'm just thinking, I imagine if I talked to the last 2 down there, there's only 2 more, right? Yeah. So again, I just wanted to stress that I wasn't lying to y'all. It's a small industry. Be professional and be awesome. Again, I saw that from all of y'all here today. You guys were all, every game I saw, every person I talked to, blew my socks off, gave me hope for the future. It really did. I'm going to shut up now.
We have people asking about what are some of your most cherished mistakes, like the ones, but were really instrumental in kind of crafting you as a game developer. Oh man,
I'm jumping on the grenade. Okay. So this is the production talk, but I'll wrap it up. But early in my producer career at Riot, I was leading the champion development team and volunteering as a live producer. So it means I would oversee patches and I would take on calls. So I was overseeing the Nocturne patch. This was in March 2011 to Europe. And one of my developers forgot to hook up an image that would allow for a character portrait to go in. And as a producer in charge of it, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get that done, let's figure it out. So I worked with an engineer to inject it into the build. TLDR, when we were patching out, there was a configuration error because we haphazardly inserted that PNG into the wrong place. So what that meant was, as we were deploying to Europe, we had a mismatch with our platform, our air client, and our game client. And I had no shit at this time. Like, I was trying to be confident and move forward and move things ahead. And the engineer said to me, she's like, hey, we're having an issue with the air client here. What do you want me to do? And I'm like, what are our options? She's like, well, we can roll it back. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Now let's hold that up. When the platform and the front end doesn't match the game client, they're not going to work. So instead of going, hey, can I understand more, or actually can we escalate, I just said, no, let's go ahead and do it. So I go home, and at 3 in the morning, I'm downloading the patch from the CDN before she goes live, and she asks, should I pop it? So that means like let it loose to everybody. And I go, yeah, go ahead. So everyone in Europe is downloading this fucked up patch, and I get home and I start downloading it, and it gets to 99.9%, and it hangs. It just hangs like this. And I go, holy shit. So then I escalate, I call the head engineering, head of development, and we figure it out, but 70,000 users in Europe had to reinstall the game, and I learned how to ask more questions. And just eat it, and that's a great lesson. So ask questions.
Woo! Woo!
I think there's the idea behind killing your darlings or killing the baby sometimes. The game that I've since kickstarted started out as one idea, which just to generalize, it turned out it was really, really free for it. We had this idea, we worked on it for months, it was a semester-long project in school, we were super excited about the simulation type thing. It was horrible. It was just terrible. So we figured out, well, what do we actually like about this concept? What's worth saving? Is it anything to do with this terrible, miserable gameplay? We realized that small talk in game is horrible. Like, you don't really talk about the weather in real life. Why do you want to do that in game? We basically just hacksawed it. We cut off most of the limbs, kept a little bit of the torso, and started salvaging it and patching it into something else via rapid prototyping. I think if you spent something, say 2 weeks on a project, and you kind of found the fun, as they say it, then maybe it's time to start hacking off limbs and making a Frankenstein that will.
So this isn't really a mistake, but this is just a cautionary tale. My first game in the game industry, which is, again, weird if you heard my talk, I was 33, was Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. The longest video game title in history. Anyway, so I'm working on this game, doing scripting and programming, and one of the things when you're making a very long, complex RPG is you'll put cheat NPCs in. And this is the guy you might be like, oh, set this quest flag, give me some XP, do some things. But you know, that wasn't good enough for me, so I would put in like choreographed Mandalorians doing like choreographed dancing maneuvers just there, because they were all going to get turned off. I didn't think anything of it, you know, or I put some funny, very inappropriate dialogue in there for cheat commands, and I'm not going to repeat any of them here. But then then fast forward like 10 years later, Chris Avalon's like, hey, I'm giving this interview, like a podcast, you know, do you want to get in on that? It's about the Sith Restoration, or the Restored Content Project, whatever the thing's called, I can't remember. And so I'm like, yeah, sure. We're talking about halfway through the interview, you guys are like, yeah, so we found some stuff. I don't think it's canon. I'm like, he's like, yeah, it was like dancing Mandalorians. I'm like, oh, I know what this is. Anyway, everything you put into the game is gonna, just don't. All the time, I always have to pull stuff out, because if it goes in, and in the case of them, it did. It went in. We never took it out. Why would we bother, right? That's how actually people found out about the cut content. To begin with, they're like, you didn't finish the game. And I'm like, you only know that because you went and looked at all this stuff. Anyway, so just be careful what you put in the game, because, you know, if it stays in, you know, you're going to have to ask him or be answered embarrassing questions about why you think you're funny, but you're not.
On a different note, if you're working on a smaller project at least, something you might be demoing to possible investors or just showing off at events, etc., make sure you have hotkeys, because there's nothing worse than showing off this thing that you're pretty proud of, and then suddenly everything goes to shit, and you want to show this one moment and you can't get to it, so hotkeys are great.
Well, I'm sure maybe one out of all you guys might end up working with gaming hardware or developing gaming hardware. We had, well, an issue that wasn't totally my fault, but it was a problem. We had a controller for the Wii U released, and we had our final factory prototypes, and we tested them, so everything was fine until we got our main shipment, which we didn't test those controllers. So just, you know, it probably can't be taken to game development or patches, like mentioned, but testing that final shipment will definitely be worth it.
All right, so I understand that there are some people who are having difficulty getting access to the Discord server. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open things up, and you can raise your hand, and if you don't look too shady, I'll... So really no one. No, yeah, just raise your hand, and I'll like select some people I saw a hand go up real quick. You, yeah, you that just looked at. Yeah, that's
okay. What is your least favorite thing about developing games right now?
Where do I start? No, I think, you know, it's hard. I think I would have answered that question differently at each sort of phase of my life. and I'm sure it's going to keep changing. But you know, I think the hardest thing is I really, especially now, more officially even, that like I have a lead in my title, but just in general, the way I've been mentored and coached throughout my career is there is no problem that you can't blame yourself for, and that makes dealing with problems a lot more humbling. And it's funny how much easier sort of the mentality had been in the past. It's just been like, oh, my boss doesn't know what they're doing, this game's stupid. And it's, in a way, you're unhappy, but it's a lot easier to like just point at that. Well, it's like, well, I can't change it, they're stupid, right? Whereas now, I'm the one. And I think also just the culture that's been taught to me and the way of operating that's been taught to me is just like, in any situation now, I try to think of like, well, how am I contributing to this problem, right? Like, even if someone else is failing, well, it's like, well, I could have talked to them. I failed at letting them know that this could happen. I failed, you know, like, and so there's just no way of getting off the hook anymore. And especially in game development, though I'm sure it's present in a lot of things, there's just constant problems. Like, you're doing a thing that is so interdependent, and so full of risk, and so full of new things coming together, and so full of changing technology, and so full of emotional people, and everybody cares and wants this thing to be great. And like, there isn't a day that isn't full of heated discussions and things falling apart or things coming together. It's just like a roller coaster constantly, and it's like, and it's weird because that's what I love, and that's also what makes me tear my hair out, right? And so it's one of those things. I think it's like I wouldn't have it another way, but it's also like it makes me not get sleep, you know. I guess that's my answer to that.
One of my fears is, are the 20,000 lines of code I'm about to write going to screw me 3 months from now? Or somebody else? The uncertainty of if the way I'm architecting something right now, is it the right way to be doing it? Am I going to be kicking myself, or other people going to be kicking me down the road? And it just comes down to thinking about it a lot more deeply than you might expect. You can be all gung-ho to go write a safe game system, but you know, when you find out it's not going to be anywhere near robust enough for the game you're going to end up making, wasted a lot of time. So I think I'm probably a somewhat slower programmer than other people, but I like to think it's because I'm making sure that what I'm going to do isn't going to blow up in my face.
So that's true probably for these guys who have to get stuff done. But if you go pure indie and you're not beholden to someone, there's the obvious terrible slog where the game's not fresh anymore, and you're like, I just need to get this done. I think this sucks because I've been working on it forever. Maybe I'll just never get it done, not put it out. So there's the, I need to finish this and actually get it out there. Because if you don't have anything out there, no one's going to give a crap. We'll never know that you got 75% of your project. And then there's also the masterpiece syndrome, which is, it's not good enough, this isn't fun, I can make this prettier, if I wait for the next Unity update, this thing will be in, and you just have to pull the trigger at some point. It's not there. It's never going to be perfect.
All right, I think we have time for one more. Ooh, made it spicy. All right.
All at the same time.
Yeah.
Decide.
All right, back to center.
What is the hardest thing? What is the biggest obstacle of getting that first job?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this actually a lot. It's, you gotta persevere. The thing that I look for when I'm interviewing is, again, as coming into this as juniors, you're not going to be held to the same bar that like I would be if I went to go apply for a job. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for passion. I'm looking for people who want to learn quickly and react quickly and just they're engaged and that's what they want. That's what I'm looking for. Like I said in my talk, I'm not looking for somebody who's already he or she or whatever. I'm not looking for somebody who's done it already. I'm looking for somebody who's ready to do it. Again, there's some, you know, depending on the position, there might be a minimal technical bar that I need you to hit. But even at the interview, I'm going to work with you to try to get you there. You know, if I think, you know, you've got everything else that I'm looking for. I highly recommend, I mean, I shouldn't say highly recommend because I feel like I'm signing you up to get shot, but like QA is a good entry level to see like how the sausage is made. I mean, programmers don't have to worry about that so much, right? I mean, junior programmers, it's rough. QA is unappreciated. When I worked in the regular software industry, QA was different than the game industry. QA engineers, and that's what they're called outside of the software industry, are totally different from testers in the game industry. They both called QA and stuff, but it'll really get you into it. And if you're at a good company, they'll look to promote from within. They're going to want to see your skills. We've promoted at Obsidian many people from QA to art, to design, and even to programming. When those junior positions become available or those internships become available.
First job is tough. I think a lot of it actually is how well do you really represent yourself. You know, do you really know what it is that you have to offer? You think you might know what it is you have to offer, or even you think that the company in granting you this interview, they think that they know what you have to offer, but do you really know what you have to offer? And we can be very bad at evaluating ourselves sometimes. That's why it's so important to be able to, you know, communicate with other people. You work on a team when you're a student or a hobbyist, and they can tell you who you are as a programmer or who you are as an artist. You're not always the best person at representing that, but if you have that communication and you have all those different points of views, that helps you when it comes to being able to represent yourself to other potential people that you want to work with. You could say, this is what I was able to give to these people. These people trusted me to do this, and that's what I can give to you.
Yeah, I want to add some more to what I said. I don't mean to hog this, but the other thing that stands out for me, I'm just in my mind, I'm playing back all the people I've interviewed, and I talked about this. If you have something to show me, you're already standing out, right? There's a lot of people, like if we have a junior position, all we get is a resume. But if all of a sudden you have a resume with a portfolio, or a resume with a demo, or a resume with a mod, you're already standing out. That's huge. So like all of these game projects, every game project I saw was impressive. And like I said, most of them are 1 or 2 steps away from something you could sell. So I think for all of you who have worked on that, you did a great job, and I would be impressed by any of this stuff if you guys showed up. Again, I say guy, I'm speaking colloquially. I'm actually very pleased. I have a 3-year-old daughter, so I'm so happy to see this industry open up more and more. So I say guys, it's just because I'm old and I talk bad. But everything that you've already worked on that I saw, that demo, all of that would be impressive to me, you know? Again, I'm not looking for like, hey, I need somebody who knows how to write a complete, you know, DirectX 12 3D renderer and supports all this. I'm not looking for that at your entry level, you know? So, I think you guys all did, I was blown away by what I saw today. So, anyway, show this.
Yeah, I mean, and just to echo that, like, I think what really spoke to me, what you're saying is like, the biggest obstacle is perseverance. And I know that's like such an abstract thing to say, but it's like, sometimes I've had a tough thing to resolve sometimes because people will call this industry really, really competitive, for instance, right? Especially from like an animation or art perspective, right? But at the same time, because I was always like, yeah, I agree with that, but then why are we so desperate to hire people? It's so competitive, why have we been trying to hire an animator for the last 2 years? Like, it's actually not competitive in the way that I think a lot of people, at least not the discipline and zone that I'm in. It's more that nobody is reaching the bar. It's not that we're getting 20 amazing animators and we're like, which one do we pick? It's that we aren't getting any. We're getting hundreds, but we're not getting any, and we're not hiring anybody. And so really that biggest obstacle is becoming good enough. It's like your actual biggest opponent is the craft itself. And you need to work together, and you need to find resources, and you need to make developing that skill part of every day of your life to be able to get there. Then from there, like, because at the same time, it's like, how do I get that first job? It's like, there's people that come out of school that are so good. I mean, I've got animators, as soon as I look at their reel, it doesn't matter that they have no experience. I'm like, oh shit, they're going to be able to pick where they work. Like, we better get off it quick. You know what I mean? Like, and lo and behold, they're interviewing at Blizzard. They're interviewing at Valve. They're interviewing, like, it's like, they're going to get snapped up immediately, right? And I think also you have to overcome the constant feeling that, I don't want to do this, I'm not good enough. Like, my first job, I mean, this sounds like so unrelatable to people, but like my first job was at Pixar, and I got that job by applying, and I know it's not that easy for most people, but here's the thing, I almost didn't. It was down to the last day to apply for the internship, and my friend literally forced me. He was like, dude, I have it open for you, apply. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to get a job at Pixar. This is so stupid. And the reason I was really saying that is because I didn't want to fill out a 20-page form. Right? It's like, it's also feeding into that laziness. And it's like, holy crap, my life would be different if I hadn't taken that half an hour to do that. And the form said, you must have a self-portrait. And I'm like, what? So immediately I turned to my friend, I'm like, they need a self-portrait, I'm not going to apply. And he's like, whatever, draw something really quick. You know, and I'm just like, okay. And I got this internship, and my career spiraled in ways and then folded in ways that you'll never be able to plan for. But I guess my point is like, you have to get in the thick of it constantly, and it's going to feel like absolute shit until one day it doesn't. You know, I don't know, yeah.
So we're small. I partially started the company because I didn't want to find a job. And then like where I interviewed, and I was like, I'll make my own stuff. So for us, if you have a portfolio, I want to know exactly what you did with that stuff. If you're an artist, I would love to see your crappy Unity prototype. If you're a programmer, I would love to see your crappy Maya models. I want to know that you don't have to be the smartest person. I don't even necessarily want that kid who's the top of the class. I want the kid who worked really, really hard to figure out crap that they need to do so that they can make what they want to make. I think that's, if you can demonstrate that you're a hard worker and will figure out crap that you don't know, you can show that in your portfolio, you can show that when you talk to you in an interview. You go, I can't low polygon. I haven't done mobile development, but I heard about this stuff. I've been looking for the product fast.
Where are my non-tangible skilled producers at? Raise your hand. Yeah. Okay. So I don't have any tangible skills other than I like games and I know a bit about everyone's craft. So everything they said is true. I would add hustle and perseverance to Tomas's point. You don't give up. You need to continue to apply to things and make connections with people. Networking is important. Like, you have all now interacted with us. I encourage you to continue to interact with us. We may be able to help you, or one day, you never know what happens, right? Like, you don't know.
People to help us.
Okay, absolutely, we'll be working for you.
People in the room.
Exactly, you all will help each other. Like, some of us here are classmates, we still talk to each other. Like, we're all gonna age and rise in this industry together. So being able to create connections, keep in touch with people, be honest, be helpful, be good people, don't be dicks, right? Like, people will remember it, like, your character matters. So do all those things and don't give up, and I can't guarantee it, but I think your chances of success will be better than none if you do that.
I honestly have not been on an interview for many, many years. I've been lucky enough to work with the same people for about 22 years now. But I would say if you know where you really want to work, you might not want to interview there first, especially if you are coming out of college and you haven't had many job interviews. Find local studios, places that you may not really expect you want to work at, and just interview as many times as you can and get some practice at it. So when you do get to the company that you know is your first choice, if you haven't already taken a job with somebody else that, wow, these people are actually really great, you might have a better chance at getting into your first choice.
I think that's all we have time for. But thank you all very much for our event. today. So thank you guys. While we're passing the feel goods around, you guys, in coming out here, you make events like this. We would like to get a picture of the devs with all of you guys who came out here to commemorate this, because it's the first time we do it. We don't want it to be the last. We want this to continue at least every year. And we would like to get a picture of the first one. So, devs, please stand. We don't want you guys.